2:14 a.m. The kitchen light flickers once, then holds. Selim Ren doesn't move from his chair. The table in front of him is small, barely big enough for 2 plates. One cracked mug. A phone with a spiderweb fracture across the corner of the screen. He's been sitting here for 47 minutes. On the couch in the next room, his father Solren breathes slow and heavy. Still in his work clothes. Gray uniform, name tag clipped crooked near the collar. His hands rest open at his sides. Palms up, and even in the dim light the chemical stains show. Faded orange-brown streaks that never fully wash out no matter how long he scrubs. Selim watches him for a moment. Then he turns back to his phone. The video is playing again. He's watched it 11 times tonight. He's 15 years old. The footage is shaky. Someone recorded it on a flip phone, back when that was the only option. A ballroom. High ceilings. Crystal chandeliers throwing gold light across a room full of people dressed like money. And in the center of that room, a young man standing completely still. Surrounded. The crowd is tight around him. Phones are raised. A board director in a gray suit is pointing at a projection screen. Bank records, security logs, a long column of transaction dates. His voice cuts clean across the room. This is the man who did it. Right here. The young man in the center doesn't move. Doesn't reach for a microphone. Doesn't open his mouth. Because he can't. His name was Solren Ren. And he was already mute by then. Selim hits pause. He stares at his father's face frozen on the screen. 24 years old, jaw tight, eyes wide. Not with guilt. Not even with fear. With something worse. Recognition. Like he had already known this moment was coming and still couldn't stop it. Selim sets the phone face down on the table. He opens the drawer beside the refrigerator. 3 items inside. He's looked at them before. Many times. But tonight is different. Tonight, he takes out the small laminated contact card and holds it under the kitchen light. ArcLight Corporate Foundation. 3 names printed in clean black letters. Cashin ArcLight, Dorian ArcLight, Lucian ArcLight. A phone number at the bottom. Selim opens a new message thread. His thumbs hover. He knows what this is. He knows it's reckless. He knows a 17-year-old with a cracked phone typing into the dark at 2 a.m. doesn't change anything. Except, he also knows what he saw in that video. 3 men standing at the back of that ballroom. Watching. Saying nothing. He types 4 words. Do you want me? He stares at the message for a full minute. Then he presses send. Hi viewers. Have you ever done something bold in the middle of the night that you couldn't fully explain? Even to yourself? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know. The screen shows 1 gray checkmark. Sending. Then 2. Delivered. Selim exhales. He sets the phone down. He leans back in the chair and closes his eyes and listens to the sound of his father breathing on the couch 15 feet away. 3 seconds pass. He picks the phone back up. The check marks have turned blue. Read. And then, 3 dots appear. Someone is typing. Selim's chest goes cold. The dots move for 4 seconds. Then they stop. No message comes. Just silence. And the blue checkmarks staring back at him like 2 open eyes. The video starts at a fundraiser gala. 15 years back. The kind of event where the chandeliers cost more than most people's cars. Where the waitstaff wear earpieces and the appetizers come out on black slate plates. A charity auction for the ArcLight Foundation's youth program. Solren Ren is there not as a guest but as something rarer. A trusted insider. He's 24. Quiet by choice back then, not yet by force. Sharp in the way that people who grew up with nothing tend to get sharp. He had worked inside the ArcLight Corporate Foundation for 3 years as an Omega Tier advisor, which in their world meant he had access to financial routing systems, internal donor records, donor shell account identifiers. Things most people never get to see. He earned that access. Every single piece of it. He documented programs, verified fund allocations, cross-checked donation logs against public tax filings. He wasn't there to climb. He genuinely believed in the Foundation's stated mission: literacy programs, youth housing grants, community medical access in underfunded neighborhoods. He believed those things were real. He was wrong about that part. The gala runs smoothly for the first 2 hours. Then, at 9:47 p.m., a board director named Oaks Pryor steps to the center of the room. Older man, silver hair cut close, the kind of face that photographs well from any angle. He waits until the room quiets. Then he says Solren's name. "I need everyone to look at this." The projection screen behind him lights up. Bank records, security logs, a timeline of transactions, digital access stamps showing someone moving restricted donor funds through 3 different routed accounts, and every single access point traces back to one name: Solren Ren. The room reacts immediately. Phones go up. Murmuring becomes noise. Someone near the back says something sharp that draws nervous laughter. Solren stands completely still. He had been attacked 6 weeks earlier. A robbery that the police logged and quickly closed. 2 men outside his apartment building, and what they did to his throat left the vocal cords damaged in a way that 2 surgeries couldn't fully fix. His voice was gone. Not weakened. Gone. He reaches into his jacket pocket for the small notepad he carries everywhere. No one waits for him to write anything. Security is already moving toward him. Pryor continues speaking, controlled, precise, the practiced calm of someone who has done this before. He names the accounts. He names the dates. He names the amounts. Every piece of evidence lands in the room like a brick. Solren tries to hold up one hand. Stop. Wait. But the crowd has already shifted. The energy in that room changed the moment the records went up on screen. These were wealthy, connected people who had written large checks. The idea that someone had routed their money anywhere unauthorized was something they felt personally, immediately, and loudly. At the back of the ballroom, 3 men stand together. The Arclight triplets. Cashin, Dorian, Lucian. Early 30s. Tailored suits. The kind of presence that fills a room without trying. Their father had built the foundation. They had inherited both the name and the weight of it. They watch Oaks Pryor present the evidence. They don't speak. They don't move to defend the man in the center of the room. And they don't look away. Security reaches Solren. Pryor says calmly, "Please escort him from the building." Solren looks across the room one more time. His eyes find the triplets. He holds that look for 3 full seconds. Then he's gone. The ballroom returns to its hum within minutes. Drinks are refilled. The auction resumes. Selim pauses the video. He had watched that moment, his father's eyes finding those 3 men, at least a dozen times. But tonight he watches it differently. He doesn't look at his father's face. He looks at the background. Far left corner of the frame, almost out of shot. A man standing in the shadows near the service entrance. He's not part of the crowd. Not security. Not staff. He's watching Oaks Pryor. Not with the expression of a witness. With the expression of someone watching a plan execute exactly on time. Selim has never seen that face in any news report, any file, any record connected to this night. But something about the angle, the stillness, the quiet attention of that figure in the dark makes the hair on the back of his neck rise. Selim was 6 years old the first time he understood his father was different. Not different in the way that needed explaining. Different in the way that becomes the air inside a home, something you breathe before you can name it. Solren Ren moved through their apartment in a language that had no sound. Hands. Eyes. Notes on the whiteboard mounted beside the refrigerator. Dinner is ready. Get your jacket. I'm proud of you. That last one stayed up for 3 days once. Selim had traced the letters with one finger before school every morning. They lived in a two-bedroom off a bus route in a part of the city where the laundromats stayed open until midnight and the corner stores had bulletproof glass at the register. Solren worked nights, maintenance and cleaning at 3 rotating office buildings downtown. He came home before sunrise, and when Selim got up for school, his father was usually already asleep on the couch, too tired to make it to the bed. Uniform on, shoes still laced, hands open at his sides. Selim learned early not to wake him. He learned a lot of things early. He learned to make his own breakfast, to check the mail, to pay the utility portal online when his father left the login card on the counter. He learned to read a room faster than other kids, to pick up on the small shifts, the things people communicate without speaking. He got that from Solren. His father was the most observant person Selim had ever encountered. And over time, Selim started noticing things about his father's routine that went beyond exhaustion and survival. When Solren cleaned the corporate offices at night, he didn't just mop floors and empty trash. He collected things, not valuables, not anything that would look like theft to a security camera. Papers, discarded drafts, old printouts left in recycling bins, meeting agendas that someone didn't shred, financial summaries with names and figures that had been thrown out like they meant nothing. Solren brought them home in folded stacks tucked inside his uniform jacket. He sorted them carefully, organized them into folders that went into a series of cardboard boxes on the high shelf of his bedroom closet. The shelf Selim couldn't reach until he was 13. When he finally did reach it, he understood. His father wasn't just surviving. He was building something. The folders were labeled by year, by company name, by individual names, executives, board members, financial officers. There were notes in his father's handwriting cross-referencing dates and amounts. Transaction patterns mapped out in pencil on graph paper. Shell company names underlined twice. Solren had spent years, quietly, in the middle of the night, inside the buildings of powerful people, collecting the evidence they thought they'd thrown away. He believed the scandal that destroyed him had been constructed, and he had been gathering the architecture of that construction ever since. Selim stood in the closet doorway holding a folder for a long time. Then he went back to the kitchen. He opened the drawer beside the refrigerator. 3 items. The contact card he'd already found before. An old photograph creased along the center, the kind that prints from a drugstore kiosk. It showed his father at what looked like a corporate event, years younger, standing beside a man Selim didn't recognize. Both of them mid-laugh, relaxed, like the picture was taken in a good moment. Selim flipped it over. 1 word on the back in his father's handwriting. Before. And the 3rd item, a manila folder sealed with a rubber band. On the tab, written in permanent marker, if they ever come back. He didn't open the folder that night. He went back to the video instead. Selim pulled it up on his laptop this time, larger screen, better resolution. He scrubbed it back to the moment he'd caught earlier. The man in the shadow near the service entrance. He paused it, zoomed in. The image was grainy. 15-year-old footage filmed on a phone across a crowded ballroom wasn't going to give him a clean face. But he could make out the outline. White male, mid-40s, maybe older, close-cropped hair, dark jacket. He wasn't staff, no uniform. He wasn't a guest, no name tag lanyard, no drink in hand. He was just standing there, watching Oaks Pryor finish the accusation. And here was the thing that locked it in Selim's chest. At the exact moment security began walking toward his father, the man in the corner did one thing. He nodded. Small, quick, almost imperceptible. Not at Pryor. Not at the security team. And no one Selim could identify in frame. Just a nod. Like confirmation. Like something had been checked off. Selim screenshot the frame. Then he started searching. It took him 2 hours and 4 different cross-reference approaches before he found the name. Valrik Hallstrom. He pulled the public record first. the standard profile. Hallstrom had appeared on the periphery of corporate financial reporting around that time, a mid-level consultant who moved through several finance-adjacent firms in the years surrounding the gala. Nothing that stood out. But that was 15 years ago. Selim searched the current record. Valrik Hallstrom was now a primary political financier. Federal lobbying connections. 3 PACs registered under holding companies that traced back to him through 2 intermediary names. He sat on the advisory boards of 6 corporations. 3 of those corporations had direct government contracts. His wealth had grown in a specific window, the 18 months immediately following the ArcLight Gala. Selim leaned back in the chair. Power rarely destroys someone for no reason. There is always a profit behind the lie. He wrote that down in the margin of his notebook, stared at it. Then he reached up and got the sealed folder from the drawer, pulled the rubber band off slowly, opened it. The first page was a handwritten summary. His father's tight, controlled print, the letters perfectly formed even under what must have been enormous pressure to write this. Shell Company 1, registered 14 months before the gala. Controller VH. Shell Company 2, registered 9 months before the gala. Controller VH. Shell Company 3, registered 3 months before the gala. Signatory, unknown. Donation routing changed twice in the 6 weeks prior to the event. I flagged this internally. No response. The flag was deleted from the system 2 days before the gala. Page after page. Transfers. Dates. Account numbers partially redacted, but enough remained to see the shape. The money hadn't been stolen by Solren Ren. It had been rerouted through accounts that were set up well in advance and then scrubbed. The projection that Pryor threw up on that ballroom screen had been tailored to make the trail point at one person. Someone had spent months building that frame. Selim reached the last page. A single line written in heavier ink than the rest, like his father had pressed down harder when he wrote it. They were never meant to see this. 5:47 a.m. The sky outside is still dark, but the kind of dark that's losing its grip, that deep pre-dawn hour where the black starts going gray at the edges without committing to it yet. The street below the apartment is quiet. Then it isn't. 3 black vehicles turn onto the block. Clean. Late model. Moving slowly. Not the speed of emergency, the speed of intent. They pull to the curb in a straight line and the engines cut. A curtain shifts in the window of the apartment across the street. An upstairs neighbor steps onto her small balcony in a robe, coffee mug in hand, and stops moving when she sees the cars. The doors open. 3 men step out. They don't move like men who are uncertain about where they are. Each one is dressed in black. Tailored suits, the kind that fit so well they look like a second skin. No ties. The top button of each collar left open, which somehow makes them look more serious, not less. Cashin Arclight steps out first. Dorian second. Lucian last. They stand on the sidewalk for a moment and look up at the building. No discussion. No hesitation. They've already decided everything before they got here. Selim is watching from the window. He has been awake all night. He pulls on his hoodie, walks to the apartment door, and opens it before they can knock. They look at him. He looks at them. In his mind, he had imagined this moment many ways. He thought he might feel afraid. He thought his hands might shake. He thought he'd have to say something rehearsed and careful to explain why a 17-year-old sent that message at 2 a.m. He doesn't feel any of that. He just steps aside and opens the door wider. They walk in. The apartment is small. That fact has never felt quite as present as it does right now, with 3 of the most recognized men in the city standing in the narrow hallway between the front door and the living room. The ceiling is low. The furniture is secondhand. There is a whiteboard on the wall by the kitchen that reads, in his father's handwriting, by Milk, Tuesday. The contrast sits in the room like something physical. From the couch there is a sound. Solren Ren wakes up. He does what he always does first. Sits up, orients, reaches for the notepad on the side table out of reflex. Then he sees the three men standing in his hallway and he goes completely still. His face changes. It doesn't go blank, that would be easier to watch. It shifts through several things fast. Confusion, recognition, a sharp and animal alertness that looks like a body remembering a threat it survived a long time ago. His eyes cut to Selim, hard, questioning, almost frantic beneath the surface. Selim doesn't look away. He holds his father's gaze and gives the smallest shake of his head. It's okay. Solrin doesn't look convinced. He stands slowly. He's still in his uniform, still carrying the chemical smell of last night's shift on his skin. And he's standing in front of three men who last saw him being walked out of a ballroom in handcuffs while a crowd recorded with their phones. The silence in that apartment lasts a long time. Cashin Arclight breaks it. His voice is low, measured. The voice of a man who learned how to control a room before he learned how to leave one. We received your message. He looks at Selim, not unkindly, but not soft either. Why did you ask if we wanted you? Selim didn't answer right away. He walked to the kitchen table, picked up the manila folder, and set it down in front of Cashin Arclight without a word. Cashin looked at it, then at the boy standing across the table from him. He opened it. The first page took him 10 seconds to read. The second page took longer. By the third page, Dorian had moved around the table to read over his shoulder. Lucien stayed back, arms crossed, watching Solrin, watching Selim, watching the room the way someone watches a situation they're not sure they've correctly assessed yet. Solrin hadn't moved from his spot near the couch. He was watching the triplets go through the folder with the same stillness he used for everything. Controlled, contained, giving away nothing on the outside while everything underneath was clearly running fast. Selim stood and waited. He had rehearsed this moment in his head many times over the past several weeks. The words he might say, the arguments he might need to make, how to explain what his father had spent years collecting from recycling bins and discarded printouts in buildings that paid Solrin minimum wage to clean. But he didn't need any of it. The folder spoke for itself. Cashin turned the last page. He set it down flat on the table. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Lucien spoke from across the room. His voice was lower than his brother's. Measured in a different way, not controlled like Cashin, but careful. Like a man who thinks before every sentence. Why contact us now? Selim looked at him directly. Because you're the only ones powerful enough to destroy the people who framed him. No drama in the delivery. No shake in the voice. Just the flat, clear truth of it. Lucien held his gaze. Dorian straightened up from the table and looked at his brother. Something passed between the three of them, not a conversation, more like a current. The kind of communication that develops between people who have shared every significant moment of their lives since birth. Solrin watched it happen. His hands were at his sides. Notepad in his left hand, uncapped pen in his right, but he hadn't written anything. He was reading the room the way he always read rooms. And what he read in that moment made his expression shift. Not relief, not hope, something more careful than either of those things. Cashin reached back into the folder. He pulled out the page with the shell company records, the one with Valric Hallstrom's initials next to 3 registration dates. He studied it the way someone studies something they already half knew and are now seeing confirmed in ink. He flipped through 2 more pages. Then he stopped. He looked up, and what he said next, it wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was almost quiet. This goes far beyond Hallstrom. He set the page down slowly. We've seen some of these account structures before. He looked at Dorian. The internal audit. Dorian nodded once. And Lucien turned and looked out the small apartment window at the 3 black vehicles sitting on the curb below. Engine heat still rising faintly in the cold morning air. Revenge burns quickly. But justice, that requires patience. And in that kitchen, with morning just starting to crack through the window above the sink, something had just shifted that none of them could pull back from. Cashin set the folder down and told them what they'd found. He didn't soften it. He didn't build up to it slowly. He just said it. 3 months ago, we initiated a full internal audit of the Foundation's financial history. Every account, every routing path, every transaction going back 22 years. He paused. We found gaps, large ones, money that moved through the system cleanly on paper, but when you trace the full chain, it routes through holding entities that shouldn't exist. Entities that were never disclosed, never reported. Dorian picked it up from there. We brought in a forensic accounting firm, private, no connection to any board member, past or present. He looked at the folder on the table. What your father collected, the shell company names, the routing dates, 3 of these structures appear in our audit. The apartment was completely silent. Selim looked at his father. Solren was standing very still. His eyes were moving, tracking between the 3 men, processing, calculating. His pen was in his hand, but he still hadn't written anything. He didn't need to. The expression on his face said enough. He already knew. He had known for years. Lucien spoke next, and this part mattered. The attack on your father, the one that destroyed his voice, we had it listed in our records as an unrelated street crime. Closed case. 2 years after the gala. He stopped. It wasn't unrelated. The word landed in the room like something dropped from height. Selim didn't move. Hallstrom had connections to a private security firm that operated outside standard channels. The firm dissolved 8 months after the attack on your father. The principals relocated. Lucien looked directly at Solren. We believe the attack was retaliation. You had flagged the routing irregularities internally 6 weeks before the gala. Someone saw the flag. Someone decided you were a problem before you became a bigger one. Solren closed his eyes, just for a second. Then he opened them. He walked to the kitchen table, sat down. He opened his notepad and wrote 1 line and turned it toward the room. I know. 2 words. 15 years of waiting behind them. Selim watched his father's face and understood something he had never fully understood before. Solren hadn't spent those years collecting evidence because he expected it to go anywhere. He hadn't built those folders because he believed someone powerful would eventually sit in his kitchen and confirm everything. He'd done it because silence isn't the same as giving up. He was gathering proof for himself, so that the truth, even if it lived only in cardboard boxes on a high shelf, would exist somewhere. Truth doesn't disappear when you bury it. It waits. Dorian straightened. He looked at his brothers. We need to take this to federal investigators. Cashin nodded. That's already in motion. And then he looked at Selim and said what none of them had said yet. Your father tried to warn us. 15 years ago. He flagged those accounts and we never saw the flag because it was removed before it reached us. He didn't look away. Someone between him and us intercepted it. That fact sat in the room for a long moment. Dorian's jaw tightened. Lucien turned from the window, and Selim stood there in his hoodie with no sleep behind his eyes and the folder still open on the table between them, and waited, because the next question was already coming. He could see it in Dorian's face before Dorian spoke it. Why risk contacting us? Selim had heard variations of this question 3 times now. But something about the way Dorian asked it, not with suspicion, not with strategy, just with genuine need to understand, made Selim answer it differently this time. Because my father deserves one day where the truth is louder than the lie. No one in that room said anything for a long time after that. 2 weeks later, the raid happened at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. 12 federal vehicles. 3 simultaneous locations. Hallstrom's primary office in the financial district, a secondary address registered to one of his holding companies in the suburbs, and a storage facility in a warehouse park 40 minutes outside the city that hadn't appeared in any public filing. News cameras were outside before the agents finished the first sweep. The footage ran on every network by 8 a.m. Selim watched it on the small television in the apartment kitchen. His father sat beside him. Both of them in the same chairs they always used. The same cracked mugs. The same morning light coming through the same window. But nothing about that morning felt the same. The anchor used phrases like decades-long financial scheme and coordinated corporate fraud and multiple high-profile figures under investigation. Hallstrom's name appeared on screen beneath a photograph taken outside a government building. Expensive suit, confident posture. The face of a man who had operated for a long time with the complete certainty that no one would ever look too closely. Someone was looking now. Over the next 4 days, it unraveled fast. 2 corporate board members resigned by Thursday. A third retained legal counsel and stopped making public statements. One of Hallstrom's PACs filed a dissolution notice Friday morning. The forensic accounting firm the Triplets had hired released a preliminary summary to investigators, 47 pages of structured evidence covering 11 years of layered financial movement. Oaks Pryor, the board director who had stood in that ballroom and pointed at Solren Wren, was named in the investigation by day 6. He had not been seen publicly since the raids began. The Arclight Triplets issued a joint statement on day 4. It was short. It said that internal review had revealed serious procedural failures in the foundation's governance structure, that financial irregularities had been traced to parties outside the organization, and that the foundation was cooperating fully with federal investigators. The last paragraph said one more thing. We are formally reopening and re-examining a personnel matter from 15 years ago that we now believe was resolved incorrectly and under false pretenses. No name. Not yet. But Selim read it 3 times. The world didn't apologize immediately. Power never does. It maneuvers first. It repositions. It finds language that acknowledges without admitting, that moves forward without looking directly back. But this was something. On day 9, Cashin called. Selim picked up on the second ring. He listened. Your father's name has been cleared. Selim exhaled through his nose. Slow. Steady. He looked across the kitchen to where Solren was sitting at the table, writing something on his notepad. His father looked up when he heard the exhale. Read the expression on his son's face. Set the pen down. Cashin's voice came through the phone again. Quieter now. There's something else you need to know. They came back on a Thursday afternoon. This time, no black vehicles lined up on the curb. Just one car parked simply, like anyone visiting anyone. The 3 of them came up to the apartment door without the weight of the first visit. The tailored suits were still there, but the energy was different. They weren't arriving with a mission this time. They were arriving with an offer. Cashin laid it out clearly at the kitchen table. Financial compensation. A formal settlement for wrongful termination and reputational harm, the number significant enough that Selim had to work to keep his face even when he heard it. Restored executive position. A formally created director-level role inside the restructured foundation, title and authority retroactively dated to account for the lost years. Public apology. A press statement, named, specific, time to coincide with the conclusion of the federal investigation, clearing Solren Wren's name in full public record. Cashin finished laying it out and sat back. Dorian placed a document on the table. Lucien watched Solren. Solren looked at the document. He looked at the 3 men across the table. He looked at Selim. And then he picked up his pen and wrote 3 words on his notepad and turned it to face the room. I already rebuilt. He set the pen down. Pushed the document back. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. Not with the kind of performance that makes a scene. He pushed it back the way someone pushes away a plate when they're simply done eating. Finished, satisfied, not hungry for what's being offered. Cashin looked at the notepad. Read the 3 words. He nodded slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't push back. Because that answer, those 3 words, said something that no negotiation could respond to. Solren Ren had not spent 15 years waiting to be restored. He had spent 15 years building something real, something small but entirely his own, in the space that was left after everything was taken. He didn't need the table they were offering. He had already built his own. Selim felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight since he was 6 years old. He didn't have a name for it. He just felt it release. The triplets gathered the document back without ceremony. Cashin folded it, tucked it into his jacket. Dorian looked at Solren for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I respect that." And he meant it. They stood to leave. At the door, Lucien paused. He turned back, and he looked at Selim, not at his father, specifically at the 17-year-old boy who had sent a message at 2 a.m. from a cracked phone in a dim kitchen. "What did you actually want?" Lucien asked. "When you sent that message?" Selim thought about it. For real. Not the answer he'd prepared, because he had prepared one, a clean and logical version about evidence and exposure and justice. He'd had it ready since before the first visit. But Lucien wasn't asking for the strategy. He was asking for the thing underneath it. Selim looked at his father. Solren was watching him from the table, pen in hand, expression open, no instructions in it, no pressure, just waiting to hear his son answer a real question the way real people do. Selim looked back at Lucien. "I didn't want money," he said. "Not revenge either." He stopped, started again. "My father never asked for anything from anyone. His whole life. He raised me on night shift wages, and he never once complained about it. Never said a word about what he lost. And I mean that literally and every other way." He paused. "But I watched him. I watched him for 17 years. The way he moved through a room. The way he checked twice before spending anything. The way he kept those boxes on the shelf like he needed the proof to exist somewhere, even if no one ever saw it." Cashin had turned back from the doorway. All 3 of them were listening. He never asked anyone to believe him, so no one did. Selim's voice stayed steady. "I just wanted him to know that someone did, that the truth still mattered, that he hadn't been carrying it alone for nothing. That was it. No grand declaration, no dramatic close, just that." Lucien nodded once. The 3 men left. Their footsteps went down the hall. The building door at the bottom of the stairs opened and closed. Outside, the single car pulled away from the curb without ceremony. The apartment was quiet. Solren stood from the table. He crossed to where his son was standing near the window. He placed one hand on Selim's shoulder. Left it there. Selim didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He understood the language his father used better than any language he'd ever learned in school, and that hand on his shoulder said everything the words couldn't. "I heard you. I know. Thank you." Later that morning, outside on the building steps, the 2 of them sat together as the sun cleared the rooftops across the street. No particular reason to be outside. No destination. Just the light coming up. Just the quiet that had stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like something else. Something closer to peace. 15 years of silence. And finally, it didn't hurt to sit inside it. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just making sure the next generation never grows up believing that lies are stronger than truth. Sometimes it's a boy at a kitchen table at 2 a.m., asking a question no one else thought to ask, and getting an answer that changes everything. If the story moved you, if you've ever stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves, or if you know what it feels like to carry something alone for too long, drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if you want to be here for the next story on this channel, stories that challenge, that inspire, that remind you what real strength looks like, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss one. These stories are worth staying for.